It started with a phone call that turned a world upside down. On a humid May afternoon, in a sleepy town tucked between cornfields and winding rivers, Claire Bennett was preparing lesson plans for her third-grade class when her phone buzzed. She assumed it was her husband, Jason. Instead, it was her OB/GYN. Her voice, normally cheerful, was grave. Claire had tested positive for HIV. The words didn't register at first. Pregnant. HIV positive. Married. Her thoughts blurred as her hand pressed instinctively to her belly. 16 weeks along. A baby she had fought to conceive. Now this? The shock quickly turned to confusion, then fear. Jason had been her only partner for the past 7 years. She trusted him. Or so she thought. That evening, the confrontation came swiftly. Claire sat at their kitchen table beneath the yellow light of a swinging bulb and asked, point-blank, if Jason had been unfaithful. At first, he denied it. But his eyes betrayed him. Then came the unraveling. Yes, he had cheated, with more than one woman. No, he hadn't used protection. Yes, he was sorry. No, he didn't think it would come to this. Claire didn't cry. Not at first. She just stared. At the tiled floor. At the wedding photo on the fridge. At the man she no longer recognized. The diagnosis forced an urgent change in her life. Doctors placed her on antiretroviral therapy immediately, both to protect her own health and to reduce the risk of mother-to-child transmission. Statistically, if treatment began early enough, the baby had a good chance of being born HIV negative. But nothing was guaranteed. In their tight-knit Midwestern town, news spread fast. Whispered rumors passed through supermarket aisles and PTA meetings. Did you hear about the teacher? Poor thing, and pregnant too. Some pretended sympathy, others let their judgment bleed through in glances and silence. Claire bore it all in quiet resilience. She continued teaching. Smiled through the stares. Wore long sleeves even in the summer heat. Not because of shame, but because privacy, once gone, is hard to reclaim. Meanwhile, Jason began to unravel. The guilt mutated into anger. He drank heavily. Started showing up at Claire's school. Called her cell over and over, sometimes dozens of times a day. When she stopped answering, he began leaving voicemails, at first apologetic, then bitter, then threatening. Claire filed for a restraining order. Her doctor testified to the stress it was putting on her body. The court granted it, but Jason found ways to linger nearby anyway. Always, accidentally, running into her at the grocery store. Parking just down the block. The stress took its toll. At 27 weeks, during a late-night thunderstorm, Claire woke with a sharp pain in her abdomen and blood on the sheets. The ambulance lights cut through the darkness as she was rushed to the county hospital. It was too early. The baby's lungs weren't ready. But her body had gone into labor, and nothing could stop it. She delivered a son. Tiny. Barely moving. The NICU team worked frantically. Claire held his hand through a glove. She named him Owen. He lived for 3 hours. Those hours felt like both a lifetime and a blink. Then he was gone. The nurses wrapped his body in a blanket with bears on it. Claire was allowed to hold him one last time before they took him away. After the funeral, held on a damp, gray morning with more crows than guests, Claire didn't go home. She stayed at her sister's place on the other side of town. The nursery stayed locked. The name Owen remained stitched into the blue quilt still draped over the rocking chair. But Jason wasn't finished. Grief changes people. But Jason Bennett didn't just change, he decayed. After the funeral, he stopped pretending. He lost his job at the auto parts distributor after a violent outburst in the break room. He moved in with a friend who quickly regretted the favor. Bottles of bourbon replaced breakfast. His texts to Claire swung from heartbreak to hate. "You turned Owen against me. This is your fault. You ruined everything." Claire stopped responding. She focused on survival, physical, emotional, financial. Her body was still healing. Her savings were dwindling. Her heart was hollow. She filed for divorce. Jason's rage sharpened. The restraining order meant nothing to him. He stalked her on social media, sent cryptic messages from burner accounts. One morning, she found a Polaroid taped to her car window, her standing at the school gate, unaware, smiling faintly at a student. No note. Just the photo. A warning. Police documented the incident, but there wasn't much they could do. Claire changed her phone number. Installed cameras. Slept with a baseball bat beside her bed. Still, the dreams came. Owen's cries echoing down hallways that led nowhere. Jason's voice blending into the storm. One night, she came home to find her kitchen window cracked open. Nothing was stolen. But a glass, her favorite one, with the sunflower print, was missing from the dish rack. Just gone. She moved out the next day. With the help of her sister and a few kind colleagues, Claire found a small rental on the edge of town. It was a duplex, tucked behind a gas station, with paint peeling from the shutters. But it had good locks and no memories. That was enough. She told no one her new address, not even her principal. She taught during the day, wept in the shower at night, and watched the front yard for headlights. Then came the storm. It was early October. The sky had turned an unnatural green before sunset, and tornado sirens wailed across the valley. Claire secured the windows, checked her flashlight batteries, and curled up on the living room floor, trying to calm her heartbeat. At 11:07 p.m., her power went out. At 11:12, someone knocked on the door. A slow, deliberate knock. 1-2. Pause. 1-2. Claire froze. The storm howled outside, wind hurling branches against the siding. She reached for her phone, dead. No signal. Another knock. Then a voice. Muffled through the door but unmistakable. "Claire. It's me. Open up. Jason." She stayed silent. "I know you're in there. Don't do this. I just want to talk." A pause. Then came a louder bang. He was kicking the door now. Screaming her name. Claire backed toward the hallway, toward the bedroom. Toward the drawer where she kept her late father's revolver. She had never used it. Never even loaded it. But tonight, she did. Thunder cracked like gunfire outside. The house groaned under the wind. Then, a crash. Glass. A figure lunging through the back window. Jason wasn't alone. A second man, a friend of his, a local nobody with a long arrest record, was with him. They were in the house now. Shouting, stumbling, laughing. Claire stepped into the hallway, her hands shaking. "Get out," she shouted. Jason turned. Saw the gun. Lunged anyway. Claire pulled the trigger. The shot was deafening. Jason collapsed, a look of stunned disbelief frozen on his face. The second man screamed. Claire fired again. The shot grazed his shoulder. He fled, crashing through the broken window and vanishing into the storm. Claire stood there, the revolver still raised, her ears ringing. Jason didn't move. He would never move again. By the time police arrived, the storm had passed, leaving branches scattered across the road and a darkness heavier than usual. Claire was sitting on the porch steps, drenched from rain and sweat, the revolver laid carefully on the concrete beside her. Her hands were red, not from blood, but from clenching them too tightly for too long. When Sheriff Dana Whitmore stepped out of her cruiser, she immediately took in the scene, a shattered window, a pale woman trembling in a robe, and a man's lifeless body in the hallway, sprawled near the entrance with a bullet wound to the chest. Claire didn't resist. Didn't raise her voice. She simply whispered, "He broke in. I told him to leave." Detectives worked through the night. Forensics catalogued every detail: footprints in the mud, the location of the shell casings, blood spatter on the living room rug. The second man, identified as Levi Grant, was found hours later at a local urgent care with a gunshot wound and a nervous story about a domestic misunderstanding. Levi claimed he thought Jason was just trying to talk to his wife. He insisted he didn't know Jason planned to break in, and he certainly didn't expect anyone to get hurt. But police found a crowbar in his car, along with gloves and duct tape. His story began to crumble under the weight of his own lies. Meanwhile, Claire was taken to the station for questioning. Detective Elise March, known for her calm demeanor and sharp instincts, sat across from her in the small, windowless interview room. She pushed a cup of tea toward Claire, untouched. "We just want to get everything clear," Elise said softly. "Start from the beginning." And Claire did. She told them everything: her diagnosis, Jason's infidelity, the restraining order, the stalking, the loss of her son. Her voice wavered but didn't break. When she described the moment Jason lunged at her, there was no drama in her words. Just the weary finality of someone who had run out of places to run. Detective March believed her. Still, protocol demanded a full investigation. Ballistics, autopsy, psychological evaluations. They reviewed the 911 call, recovered from the system once power was restored. Claire's voice had cracked as she said, "He broke in. I had no choice." The autopsy confirmed the bullet's trajectory matched her story, fired in fear, not malice. Jason's blood alcohol content was nearly triple the legal limit. Levi's fingerprints were found on the back window pane and the crowbar. The DA's office took weeks to decide. In the meantime, the town swirled with speculation. Local headlines were clinical: fatal shooting under investigation. But the rumors were not. At the grocery store, Claire overheard someone whisper, "She probably snapped. Couldn't handle losing the baby." At the post office, an older woman mumbled, "Poor Jason. He just needed help." Claire became a ghost in her own town. Neighbors who once smiled at her in the school parking lot now looked away. The PTA quietly reassigned her duties. Parents withdrew their children from her class. No one came to her defense. Only her sister, Mara, stood firm, posting a single message online: "She survived. He didn't. Think before you judge." 3 weeks after the shooting, the DA made their decision. No charges would be filed. The killing was ruled justified self-defense. But justice didn't feel like victory. Not for Claire. Not when the local church held a candlelight vigil for Jason and left her name off the list of lives affected by tragedy. And not when, days later, someone spray-painted "murderer" on the school's front sign. The paint was red, fresh, dripping, cruelly chosen. It smeared across the school's front sign in thick block letters: "Murderer." Not "killer." Not "criminal." Just that one word, sharp as a blade. Someone had come in the night and scrawled it there, right beneath the school's slogan, "Growing with Kindness." Claire saw it as she pulled into the parking lot that morning, heart already heavy from sleeplessness. She sat in her car, staring at the word, trying to feel numb, but the shame bloomed hot under her skin. Again. The principal called maintenance. The sign was scrubbed before the children arrived, but the damage had already been done. Claire overheard one teacher whisper, "They shouldn't have let her come back." Another muttered, "Even if it was legal, that doesn't mean it's right." No one said it to her face. No one had to. By October's end, 3 students had transferred out of her class. Parents offered thin excuses: a move, a schedule conflict, just not the right fit. But she knew. Everyone knew. At the staff meeting, her name wasn't called for any committee or project. Her mailbox in the teacher's lounge was empty. She began eating lunch alone in her car. The only ones who didn't flinch were the children. They still raised their hands with bright curiosity. Still left crayon drawings on her desk. One even had, "I love Miss Bennet," scribbled in purple. But Claire knew how fragile innocence was. She'd seen how quickly trust could evaporate. One afternoon, while writing lesson plans, the school secretary knocked on her door. "You have visitors," she said cautiously. "They said they're from Jason's memorial committee." Claire's stomach dropped. Two women stood at the front office. One wore a blouse with pressed creases and clutched a clipboard. The other was draped in a shawl, her lips pinched into disapproval. "We're organizing a candlelight walk in Jason's memory," the first woman said. "For domestic violence awareness. We'd like to use the school's parking lot as the start point." Claire blinked. "You want to hold a vigil for Jason, here?" "It's a neutral space," the second woman replied. "It's about community healing." Claire opened her mouth, then closed it. She didn't have the strength to argue. Didn't have the energy to remind them that Jason was the one who broke into her house. That her baby was dead because of stress he helped cause. That she shot him because she wanted to live. The principal approved the event. Claire took the next day off. That night, she sat on her sister's couch, watching through the blinds as candlelight flickered across the schoolyard. Someone gave a speech. Someone played guitar. People wore purple ribbons and murmured about tragedy and redemption. No one mentioned Claire's name. Or Owen's. 2 weeks later, Claire resigned. She typed her letter at midnight, her fingers trembling over the keyboard. "Thank you for the years of support," she wrote, though it felt like a lie. "I wish only the best for the students and staff of this school." She left the signed letter in the principal's box and never returned. Packing was a quiet act. Books. Clothes. Baby things she hadn't yet been able to throw away. She sold the house within a month, cheaply, to a young couple with no clue about the blood-stained hallway. She told them nothing. Just signed the deed and walked away. She moved to a new town, 3 hours away. Small, peaceful, anonymous. No one knew her name. And for now, that was exactly what she needed. The new town didn't ask questions. That was the first gift it gave her. Claire rented a small one-bedroom above a florist shop, the kind that always smelled of damp petals and eucalyptus. The building was old, with creaking stairs and sun-faded wallpaper, but the landlord left her alone and the neighbors kept to themselves. She found a part-time job at a local library shelving books. It paid little, but it offered quiet, a rhythm of order, a sense of purpose. The head librarian, a soft-spoken woman named Harriet, never pried. She only asked once if Claire had ever worked in education. "I used to teach," Claire replied. Harriet nodded and left it at that. Claire created routines. She walked early in the morning before the town stirred, down side streets with leaning mailboxes, past diners with fogged-up windows and sleepy waitresses. The fresh air helped. So did the solitude. Her therapist, whom she met via telehealth, called it rebuilding the nervous system. Still, grief clung to her like smoke. Every night, Claire lit a candle for Owen. Sometimes she spoke to him in a whisper, about the book she was reading, about the way the leaves were turning gold, about how much she missed him. She didn't talk about Jason. Not out loud. But the scars he left weren't just emotional. She startled at loud knocks. She never sat with her back to a door. Once, when a drunk man yelled outside the flower shop late at night, she hid in the hallway closet for over an hour, heart pounding, gun in hand. Healing wasn't a straight line. Some days, she couldn't get out of bed. Others, she found herself humming softly in the library aisles, momentarily forgetting the weight she carried. She began keeping a journal. Not just about what had happened, but about what came next. It started with small entries. Got groceries without panic today. Didn't cry during the lullaby section in children's books. Saw a mother with a stroller and didn't turn away. They were small victories. But victories all the same. Winter came, and with it, snow. Claire hadn't seen snow in years, real snow, the kind that blankets rooftops and silences the world. One night, just before Christmas, she stood on her balcony, watching the flakes drift down under the glow of a street lamp. For the first time in months, she felt something that resembled peace. Not happiness. Not yet. But peace. And that was something. She mailed a letter to Mara, her sister, still in the old town. Inside it was a photo of the snow-covered street and a short note. "It's quiet here. I'm trying." Mara called that night. They didn't talk about the past. Just books. Weather. Recipes. It was enough. Claire knew she might never return to teaching. The classroom was tied too tightly to everything she lost. But in the library, she found a new rhythm. Children visited during story hour. She didn't read aloud, but she watched, smiling softly when they giggled at the funny parts. One little girl with red boots and a gap-toothed grin gave her a drawing. "It's you," she said proudly. "You look happy." Claire took it home. Taped it to the fridge. And stood there for a long time, staring at the crayon-sketched smile. Trauma has a way of echoing through the smallest things. For Claire, it came in unexpected moments, the smell of motor oil drifting from a nearby auto shop, the metallic click of a lock turning at night, a stranger's voice pitched just like Jason's. These were the echoes, fleeting, invasive. They turned ordinary days into fragile tightropes. She began keeping a list titled "Things That Still Hurt," tucked inside her journal. It was raw and unfiltered. Baby aisles, crowded rooms, men who drink bourbon, songs with lullabies, the sound of a knock, the sound of silence. And then another list, titled "Things I've Survived." A diagnosis, a betrayal, a funeral, a break-in, a bullet, the aftermath. Harriet, the librarian, eventually asked Claire if she'd like to lead a small literacy program on Saturdays for children falling behind in reading. Claire hesitated. Then said yes. The first week, only 3 kids came. A boy with a speech delay. A girl whose parents had just divorced. A quiet child who sat near the exit the entire time. She recognized herself in all of them. By the 3rd week, 6 children showed up. Claire brought stickers. They brought progress. She still had nightmares. Some nights she woke screaming, sweat pooling beneath her. In the worst ones, Owen was alive but unreachable, lost in crowds, swallowed by storm clouds, pulled away by invisible hands. She often woke gasping his name. Her therapist, Dr. Kim, said healing was not erasure. "You don't move on from grief," she explained gently. "You move with it." So Claire began taking Owen with her, quietly, invisibly. She wore a tiny silver pendant with his birthstone. Kept one of his ultrasound prints in her wallet. On his birthday, she bought cupcakes and donated them to the children's ward at the nearest hospital. No one knew why. That was okay. Then, in the early spring, a letter arrived. It was postmarked from her old town. No return address. Inside was a folded church bulletin from Jason's memorial vigil. Taped to it, a photo, Claire, caught walking down the street, taken from a distance. The message written beneath it was simple. "You'll never really leave us." Her stomach turned. She took the letter to the police. They were sympathetic but limited in what they could do. "There's no direct threat," the officer said. Could be a sick joke. Could be someone trying to stir up fear. Claire already knew fear. This was something colder, intrusion. But instead of fleeing again, she made a different choice. She enrolled in a self-defense course. Bought a better home security system. Told Harriet. Told her therapist. And most importantly, told herself, I'm not going back into hiding. That week, she added a new line to her journal. Things I am becoming, brave. Spring gave way to summer, and the world came alive again. The library garden, once dormant, burst into color. Claire watched as bees flitted between sunflowers and lavender, children shrieked with laughter during outdoor story time, and the townspeople swapped jackets for short sleeves. She found herself breathing more deeply, laughing more often, still cautiously, but genuinely. There were still shadows. Of course there were. Some nights, she left a light on. Some mornings, she skipped the mirror entirely. The trauma didn't vanish, it simply settled into the corners, no longer the center of her life. One Saturday, after her literacy group had finished, a boy named Toby stayed behind. He was small for his age, with glasses too big for his face and a backpack that dwarfed him. My mom says you're really strong, he said suddenly, eyes fixed on his shoelaces. Claire blinked. She does? He nodded. She said some people break when bad stuff happens. But you didn't. Claire knelt to his level. Well, she said slowly, I did break. A little. Maybe a lot. Toby tilted his head. But you fixed it? No, she replied. I didn't fix it. I learned how to carry it. He considered that. Then he smiled. That's strong too. That night, she wrote a final entry in the back of her journal, beneath the lists of what hurt, what she'd survived, and what she was becoming. Things I choose, to stay. Claire renewed her lease. Signed up to take night classes in counseling. She wanted, one day, to help other women the way Dr. Kim had helped her, to be the calm in someone else's storm. She never returned to the old town. She didn't need to. Its scars were permanent, but they no longer defined her. Claire Bennett, once a schoolteacher, once a victim, once a pariah, was no longer just surviving. She was living. Owen's memory wasn't a wound anymore. It was a seed. One that grew quietly, fiercely, within her. She still wore the pendant. Still lit candles on his birthday. But now, she did it with love, not just grief. And when she walked through town, head held high, the wind at her back, she didn't feel like a ghost anymore. She felt real. Present. Whole, even in her brokenness. Because some storms destroy everything in their path. And some storms reveal what's strong enough to remain standing. In a world quick to judge and slow to listen, Claire's story is a reminder, survival is not a single act, it's a choice made again and again. And sometimes, the bravest thing a person can do, is simply continue.